stay up out the way, don't get your shit splat. Stop, let this shit slide and get your lick back. And get your lick back, get your lick back. If a nigga owe you something, ain't no chit chat. Better stay up out the way, don't get your shit splat. Stop, let this shit slide and get your lick back. And get your lick back. I feel like I'm JX. J-Way. I'm a perfectionist. Adderall got me restless. I'm gone. Run with a wild crew, they get reckless. Young boy, come up off that neck. Give me that. To the trends. See you, Lee, be the best.
Good evening. No, good afternoon. And welcome to another episode of Corner of the Copa. I'm here with my co-host, Coach. How you feeling today?
Hey, it's a little, it's not as cold in the D as we get ready for New Year's here, but finally the Stones, the Tigers, is finally heating up with at least one signing here and maybe potentially one more. We'll see.
Hey, so, of course, we've talked quite a bit outside of the camera, but what is your initial reaction to this signing? First of all, we have signed Gleyber Torres, a former middle infielder of the New York Yankees, to a 1-year, $15 million contract. And he will be taking over at second base, and Cole Keith will be moving over to first. So what are your thoughts on what's your initial thoughts on the signing?
Well, it's always, what have you done for me lately? And he did not have the greatest of years last year. I know he ended better on paper, had some good hits and drove into runs in the World Series for the Yankees. But, in that lineup, you can hide some people in there. But I don't know. We as a team struggled defensively in the infield last year. The first 3-4 months of the season were abysmal from a running standpoint. Colt was struggling. Torkelson was not really consistent. I'm not going to say bad, but he had some inconsistencies, and obviously, Baez is always hot and cold before he got hurt. So we had some issues, some areas in the infield that we needed to improve with the defense, and this signing does not help it in that regard. I know people are going to say, well, he hit 24 or 25 home runs 2 years ago and 28 the 3 years before last. To me, asterisk. He hits in a rinky-dink little league stadium that is Yankee Stadium, so you adjust his numbers to Comerica's settings, and there's going to be a decline. You're not going to see those numbers, and he's not a big right-handed bat physically, his stature. He's around 6 foot, 6'1", 200 pounds, a little bit on the smaller side. He doesn't necessarily crush the ball like we've seen some right-handed hitters do at our park that make it look smaller. So there's going to be some trade-off in that regard too. I mean, look, we know about it. Nick Castellanos absolutely ripped us a new one on his way out, complaining that he would have had better numbers and home run numbers if the park was not so pitcher friendly. So I don't know. It's a 1-year deal. I think we overpaid, but I don't really know much to say anymore because they've said one thing and they do another. They're so worried about having been burned with Maeda and Baez contracts that they weren't going to overspend, and yet they've just dropped $30 million on a guy who was pitcher who was 1 foot into retirement at 37 years old, and Torres who to combine Cobbin both earned $50 million as a whole, yeah. So. And to a guy like Torres, who refused to play any other position last year, despite the Yankees making trades to improve their defense, would not move, was benched twice, had base running blunders like Baez, with shades of nightmares for us in that regard. So I don't necessarily see where the actual fit is. Now, was this out of need because Scott Harris already had an idea that they were going to move on from Torkelson in the weeks prior, announcing that Colt and Joshua Hunter Malloy were going to be taking first base reps in the winter and the spring? I mean, sure, it looks like it now, but we weren't, we didn't really have any idea that may have been the case. So because they had been publicly stating and that they were supporting Torkelson. They were going to get him back or try to do what they could. And so that's what we kind of went into the offseason thinking, that unless there was some crazy, trade or signing at first base, that, Torkelson was going to get at least one more chance. So, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the fact that, okay, we paid $15 million, fair enough. But I think that he, in a sense, he does fit a need that we had. We needed, this is a very left-handed, heavy lineup. And we didn't have a lot of guys to combat those, when they decided they want to throw a lefty pitcher at us. And this is a guy that has very good splits, in his career against left-handed pitching. He's a guy that we can throw in the middle of our lineup and be a threat to hit the ball out of the park. I know you talked about him refusing to play other positions, but he does have some versatility. He can play second base. He can play shortstop. And he has, some veteran moxie. I mean, this is somebody that's had success at the highest level of baseball in general. I mean, he played in the World Series just this past October. He set a high bar for himself early in his career. I mean, he was an all-star, and he's a two-time all-star, and he was third in Rookie of the Year votes. But yeah, he definitely needs to bounce back and prove that he can still be, a top-notch player. And with us signing a one-year deal, he's going to be, if this may not be a long-term fix for us, but he's certainly going to play as hard as he can in that 1 year so that he can solidify himself and secure a bigger bag, whether that's with Detroit or somewhere else. So a team like us who needed some stability, some power from the right-hand side, we can continue. Obviously, this is just a stopgap. This is somebody that, may not be here for a very long time, but as we continue to build and try to improve our team, I think that he's going to do that, knowing that if he continues to struggle this year, he's going to continue to get 1 year prove-it deals for probably less money if he has more struggles. But yeah, I mean, I think, we were very quiet, and we were looking to improve offensively. And this is somebody that, should be able to come in and at least be when you look at comparison and in a vacuum, I think he improves the team. You compare him to like a guy like Gio Urshela, who, is for more or less is the comparison that we have here, because we already had Cole Keith last year. We already had Baez last year. I think that we improve in that sense, offensively anyways. Obviously, Gio is a better defensive player, but we got a guy that can hit the ball out of the park and has done that at a very high level. This guy hit 38 home runs. Granted, it was in Yankee Stadium. That's not easy. There's not a whole lot of guys that have done that. I don't care if they were playing, I don't care where they were playing. That's not an easy feat to have. So, I think that there are more moves that can be made to really move the needle, but I think we move it a little bit with this acquisition. But what do you think about you were definitely somebody that felt that Torkelson should not be guaranteed a everyday first base role. What do you think about Cole Keith moving over and at least being in a platoon type situation coming up this year?
I mean, with the moves they've made and every, kind of how they've kind of strung along and pieced this together over the course of the last 3 to 4 weeks. Torkelson is the everyday starting first baseman. I think it's Colts right now, and Torkelson's going to have to fight to earn at least a somewhat even split, marginally speaking, even split just to make the team. But to your point of the right-handed bats, there really isn't anyone else. We saw Andy and Vierling play a little first base down the last couple weeks of the regular season last year. We know Vierling can field. He's made spectacular plays all over the place, third base, outfield. I don't have, if push came to shove and Torkelson just crashed out and we either had to, let him just, waste his time away in minor leagues or move him over as the, relief to Colt, then so be it. But, we've given Torkelson's had every opportunity coming out of spring training every year. He has been the starting first baseman almost unequivocally of the last 3-4 years roughly. So and he's the last 2 years it's been the same kind of cycle. Struggles early, gets benched or gets demoted, comes back, has a couple weeks or a month where he does well, better than what we hope, and then just kind of starts to slowly fizzle away at the end. Now, I will say in the playoffs, he did have some games where he had some clutch hits, drove in some runs. But again, it was not really, we when we think of the postseason as a whole, we think of the catalyst really as Kerry Carpenter, Parker Meadows, guys that were getting on base consistently, coming through with big extra base hits on a needed basis. And it wasn't really Torkelson. So I'll be interested to see. I really think it's going to be a fight in the spring. And Colt shouldn't necessarily be timid about it, knowing that, his spot is locked in no matter whether it's first or second. He's going to be playing. This is, we saw Torkelson get frustrated last year quite a bit. And, this is kind of it, I feel like. Even though we got another year with him, we're not obligated to keep him if he's going to continue to repeat this cycle.
Absolutely. And the one thing I wanted to talk about, my first initial impression of the situation, mind you, this is somebody that that we briefly talked about, and and we pretty much kind of brushed it off as probably doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. He can only play second base. Cole Keith is the second baseman of the future at that time, until we heard that Cole Keith was going to be taking ground balls at first. But defensively, he doesn't really fit the mold of what we normally would go after. But he is somebody that does a good job of dominating the strike zone. He was in the 92nd percentile as far as chase rate and in the 70th percentile of walk rate. So he's somebody that does have the ability to, even when he's not, even when he's struggling at the plate and not driving the ball as well, he's going to be able to get on base. And we know that Scott Harris likes those type of players. So he will, assist in, providing more opportunities. The way I see it, maybe closer to the top of the lineup. And then you got guys like Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, and Cole Keith following up to bat him in. But we'll get to a break and then we will can discuss this some more. All right, we're going to try something out. I want to see if I can pull up this potential lineup here. Let's see if we can get it going. Oh.
Just to confirm that this lineup you've mocked up here is based on what stands of as today, right? With additional speculations on who we may or may not still be out on.
Correct. Let's see.
And I guess we should preface it while that's being pulled up. Is this assuming in your mind that Torque is the starting first baseman, or is more of a platoon kind of?
I have him as a bench player, even though I didn't list it on there. But okay. He should be listed. He should be listed on this sheet as a bench player. But are you able to see that right there?
Yeah, it's up.
Okay, so This is what we got right here. We have Parker Meadows as the starting center fielder, as the leadoff guy, the speedy guy getting on base. I have Torres slotted as the number 2 guy. As somebody that is going to do a good job of getting on base because he can walk some, and it provides a little bit of balance. Obviously, we have a lot of lefties in our lineup, so he's going to kind of split in between Green and Carpenter at the 3 and 4 selection. I mean, at the 3 and 4 spot. We got Cole Keith at the 5. Vierling / Young, kind of depending on who's out there at third base, and that'll give us an opportunity to put Perez in one of the in the right field slot, Sweeney at shortstop, and that should say / Baez, depending on who's going to be playing every day, or who's pitching that day, and then Rogers at the number 9. And so that leaves Ibanez, Malloy, Baez, McKinstry, Dingler, and then who else did I say should have been on the bench? Torkelson.
Torque, yeah.
Assuming he makes the team out of camp, I can't say for certain. We can't say. The Scott Harris has already made a statement about the Torres signing, basically saying that with Colt Keith moving over to first base, is assuming Torkelson has a good off season and a good spring, there'll be some at bats for him to get, probably in lefty pitcher situations. With Cole Keith not being very good against left-handed pitching, although I think that you might see situations where Torres at second base, and then you can put an Ibanez you're gonna want to throw Ibanez in there when lefties are pitching as well, because he's historically mashed left-handed pitching. So it's gonna be imperative. And then of course you can always find other spots for Ibanez. Ibanez can also play third base as well. And because obviously Young is not going to play third against lefties. It might be a Vierling. So Ibanez is going to play against lefties one way or another. It's just going to be a matter of, is it Torkelson at first, or is it Ibanez, or are they going to find another place for Ibanez? So this is a very crucial spring training for Torkelson, and I commend Scott Harris for not being comfortable and complacent with Torkelson, and really putting, it's put up or shut up at this point. It's gonna be real spooky if Torkelson is shaky coming out of spring trading, because he could very well start the beginning of the year in AAA. And same is to be said for Jace Young, who is a highly celebrated third baseman, especially, and we'll get to it, but especially if we go out and get Bregman, because I think there's still a window open for Young, because we do only have Torres for 1 year. So Young could easily be thrown in at second base, where he's most comfortable anyways, as the second baseman of the future, especially, if Keith works out at first. But a lot of moving pieces. Of course, this is the way the Tigers operate with the versatility that we have. But what are your thoughts personally about the lineup, starters, bench players? What are your thoughts in general with what we have?
I think that's pretty clean. I really don't think you would want to go, what we see in the past, where we had Meadows, Keith, Green, Carpenter, or Keith, Carp switching between 2 and 5 or somewhere in there. You don't want to go 4 or 5 straight lefties. Then, they can just, makes it harder to pinch hit with the righty in there. So it does break it up a little bit. The only thing in terms of the 25-man roster that I see have an issue, you're going to have then essentially 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 being Mark not on there, and then 15 being Young. That's too many. You're not going to carry only 10 pitchers. I think Young is right now the odd. It's either him or McKinstry is the odd man out. They won't if Torkelson makes it out of camp, even if it's just a platoon. One of those two between Young and McKinstry is going down, and I'm probably going to say it's Young, only because to the point that you alluded to, if they want to put him back at second, he played most of last year transitioning over to shortstop for a while too, if I'm not mistaken.
Young?
So you would need him to get down there and get some. He didn't play too much this past year when we called him up. Him and Dingler were by far the least used guys that got called up by a landslide. And if he's going to be a part of your future, the kid needs reps. He needs to be playing most days. He can't, go through this year kind of spot starts at one position, a spot start here at another position. It's not good for the growth of a young player like that, especially if you hold him into, this guy could be here for the next 3 to 4 or 5 years with us. So I think the lineup as it is right now, I think that's pretty straightforward. There's really nothing to really, debate about that. It's a clean looking lineup. And obviously depending on what they want to do, they could flip, Perez could move up if they wanted to. I mean, Vierling technically could, and Torres could come out in the back end to help as a protector of power in the 5 spot or even the 6 spot. Most people think that would be kind of a slap to what they're capable of, but it's about how you want to build your protection in the lineup with guys that are contact speed with your power guys, your gap hitters too. So I like it. I really do. It's just a matter of, I don't think they're going to carry as many position players as we have projected here, because usually you want to be around one on either side, one more bench player for a position or one more arm, usually depending on the series or where you feel you can drive more production from carrying that extra, player at. So that's the only thing I have. But at this point, it's kind of a good problem for them to have, because we haven't really had the situation in the last 9 years prior where we've had to, compete with guys that are young and coming up and starting to prove themselves, where it's usually just been guys who've been signing off the street just to fill a body in a spot. So, yeah.
Yeah, as far as the lineup is concerned, now the more I think about it, I think that I think that the Vierling and Torres situation could be an interchangeable situation, just because Vierling does have the speed and more of ability on the base pass, and he's more of a contact hitter that can kind of move Meadows along if need be. So, dropping him down to the 6 is, it's towards the bottom of the line. Torres dropping him towards the bottom of the lineup, but he still will be able to, utilize his power at that position. As far as, having guys on the bench, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that it's going to be a battle between Malloy, Torque, maybe even Perez. I mean, when we're talking about positionally, I mean, Malloy and Perez kind of fit that same role in a sense. But I think it's going to come down to who hits better coming out of camp. I think Ibanez, because I don't think McKinstry has any more options, does he? Can he be sent back down, or I don't know.
Yeah, he's arbitrary. He's coming up on one of his last years or so of arbitration eligible. So he's still, he's 26, 27. So he's coming up to the end of it here. But I think the only other caveat to throw in there to keep it, spicy here, while it's a balmy December day for us here.
It is.
If they feel like it wouldn't be fair to one of these guys to just go back down, and then excluding Torkelson from that, just because he doesn't really have much value in terms of trade at this point. You look at a guy like Juster Hunter Malloy, who, could be, the casualty of just a collection of talent and guys they've had together that have come up and had to move different positions. Now he's just in a spot where, you've got Wenceel, Perez, and Carpenter splitting right and DH. He's shown some flashes, but I would not put it out of the equation that a sudden trade coming up near like spring training for reporting, where Hunter Malloy may have some appeal to another team looking to put him as a more regular, not necessarily a starter, but a guy who'll play more than we could give an opportunity here versus sending him down to AAA and playing every day and maybe not getting the exposure that he needs and just basically waiting for an injury and a call up at that point. But that's the only other kind of oddball thing I could think of at this point between now and, spring training. But hey, like I said, it's a good problem for us to have. And we still have some additional guys that we've drafted in the last 2 years that, we're going to slowly bring along. So at this point, hey, let's show them the money.
All right, we're gonna stop sharing here, and we're gonna get to our next break. All right, so we have talked about potential lineups with everybody that is present on this current day, and we've talked pretty extensively about Gleyber Torres. But in your opinion, obviously things are still hot about the concept of bringing in a Alex Bregman. In your opinion, do you feel like that that this signing prohibits any opportunity that we might have towards signing him, or do you feel like Scott Harris still might have something in the tuck? In my opinion, the way just his demeanor and the way he kind of talks about things, I don't think it's off the table for an Alex Bregman. So, what are your thoughts on the chances that that's something that we can make happen? And at that point, where do you think the Tigers would stand with a guy like Alex Bregman added to the bunch with everybody else?
I mean, I've seen the comments, and early on we were all hot about him, pause. But he delivered. He kicked us around in the 2 games we played down there in the AL wild card round. He kicked us around. He was one of the few guys that actually hit well against us. He continues to deliver. He's a multi-year World Series winner. He's still got it. He's a multi-Gold Glover. Which honestly, frankly, his hitting, he can crush the ball. We know that. And again, a little bit of an asterisk. He plays in a short field in Houston, and ball travels there well. But the hard hit contact and whatnot, and all those metrics, the measurables, they align well. And frankly, the defense, you get a guy like that on the corner, it kind of helps settle things down with everyone else. It's not so much of like, I can lay back and take it easy. No, you've got a guy who has done it year in and year out. Most years of his career has been voted on as the best in his position defensively. They can learn a few things and mindset and until you get up there and you watch them practice and you're out there on the field when no one else is in the stands, these guys could really benefit from that. Not to say that these guys don't have what it takes, but it's part of that process. It's why teams go out and get veterans that may end up being more of a mentorship role and don't play as much because they know they can teach them things that can help their game. So, but we're not in that spot. Obviously, we're not paying Bregman to potentially be that type of player. We're paying him to be, the almost the new franchise kind of face, because he'll get signed to a multi-year deal that'll probably be, the last one that he gets in terms of big bag. But if we're in the mix right now, as is before this speculation and the continued hot and cold with Bregman is, and we sign him, I think that's got to put us damn near as a favorite for the division after the outbound trades of Garrett Crochet and the White Sox almost fully cleaning out house over the course of the whole calendar year. And then the Guardians making some moves to save some cap space and dealing Andres Jimenez and Josh Naylor. So their entire right side infield is now gone to try and save on some salary cap room for the team to try and stay competitive beyond the next just couple years. And we did allude earlier, Naylor was going to be a free agent after next year. And I thought maybe it'd be tough. In-division trades don't really happen, right? But that would have been an interesting piece for the Tigers because, boy, he's killed us too. But, one name that we know is a Tiger killer who they did bring back on a 1-year deal is the guy who never seems to want to retire, Carlos Santana, came back in to the Guardians. So I think Bregman would definitely elevate us to a divisional favorite and would allow us to host a first round, at least, playoff series.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's the one. That's the signing that's really going to tip the scales. I like the fact that with us struggling defensively, as you talked about, and us having some moving pieces, like a guy like Cole Keith playing first base for the first time, as far as we know, and Torres, who's kind of shaky. Even Baez was once, a great defender and took a major step back last year, which might have been due to injuries, but Bregman would certainly add some stability. He also said that he would be willing to play second base, so might need that as well. But yeah, and he could provide some mentorship to a Jace Young, who's fairly new at the third base position as well. So I've heard a lot of good things about him on the field, as far as just being a hard worker and a true leader. So yeah, that would be the one that would shake things up big time amongst the major leagues and just amongst the city as a whole. But with the current situation we have at first base, I know we talked about Josh Bell as being somebody that we were interested in. Does that pretty much close the door on us seeking anything, seeking him out and his services?
I think so. At this point, they've made that decision, to move Colt over and basically be the pseudo for. I mean, if it ends up turning out well, I mean, you got a guy who can play either side on the right side, which is also a nice dynamic to have. But I think in the bigger picture of it too, in signing a Bregman, and I'll say this briefly, I think it's going to come down to, does he really still want to play majority of his innings at third base, or will most likely take a little bit of a pay cut and move and play second with Boston? And that team is loaded. All due respect to the Tigers, Boston's reloaded pretty quickly here, and they got some nice young pieces themselves. So obviously the Yankees coming off World Series appearance, but having, dealt some players, lost Soto and now Gleiber, I kind of feel like the East is now possibly a two-man race between Baltimore and Boston, with New York still kind of, in the mix. So I think that's what it's going to come down to. But from us and a fan standpoint, and I think even largely, which we've talked to death about throughout the course of the year, is Scooble. You commit to a guy like Bregman that tells Scooble, okay, we're not going to just continue slapping Band-Aids and 1-year rental guys for the next few years until you're eligible for an unrestricted extension. So, and I think that would be even a bigger step towards showing him, look, we're committed to building a World Series contending team with you beyond 2026, and this would absolutely show it. Now, I know he's talked about overspending, but if Maeda comes off after this year, who knows what will happen with Bucks come this time next year, whether we end up trading, cut him, whatever. So really, at that point, the only guy making a ton of money would be Bregman in that sense. Cole Keith's fully guaranteed, but his average annual value is only $5-6 million. So that's really nothing compared to what some of these other guys are getting, which is right around that same mark.
All right. And we're going to get to our final break, and then I don't know. It's a little soon for a break. We won't do that quite yet. Let's talk before we get into the moving forward and what's still out there for us to seek out. What minor league signings have we made over the last week or so?
Yes, I made a couple of signings here. Ryan Miller, I didn't necessarily see a position. I'm assuming it's pitching. Most of these have been pitching to kind of help bolster the minor league systems through the call-ups, and I'm sure the more recent Rule 5 draft where, we did lose a couple players as a whole, but, they signed Ryan Miller, Oliver Castillo, a righty, and then they signed a veteran catcher to Toledo, Anthony Bemboom, who's actually 34. So I think that's just more of a leadership role for Toledo to help with any of the guys there. So not really an impactful signing in terms of the Tigers are related, but, these are all moves to help supplement and round out the teams heading into spring training.
All right. So as we continue on in free agency, we've started to check off some boxes. We created, we added some depth to our starting pitching with Alex Cobb. We put a power bat in the middle of our lineup somewhere with Torres. But is there any other positions of need? Obviously, Santander is still out there. Teoscar is off the table. Corbin Burns is off the table. What's the guy? Oh, Walker Bueller's off the table. Are there any other guys that you've targeted, or any other just positions of need that you can think of as of right now?
Well, we did also see too in the recent, reheating of the stove for Bregman that the Tigers were pending a possible in-person interview with the Japanese pitcher Sasaki. Still don't know how much stock to put in that because he had an in-person interview, I think, with the Yankees, 2 weeks ago. But they did say that they would probably, the meeting, if it were to happen, wouldn't be until after the holiday. So other than that, I know we were loosely tied to Kirby Yates for a hot moment. I don't see that. That would come with a little bit of a price tag as well. And then, like you said, Santander's out there. I really don't think we're in the market for that anymore. And then the only one I think we would, depending, I don't know, maybe even just cold in general, but I know Hae-Sung Kim is one that we've been on and off about as well. Tied to, I don't foresee that happening, unless there's some freak thing that happens with someone right now. But yeah, really, it's just Bregman, maybe Sasaki, and unless they pull off one other, mid signing, if you will. I don't necessarily mean that in the slang of, below average, but in terms of where they're at in their career, it's more of like a filler. But other than that, I think they're pretty much set. Catcher would have been the only other thing, but I think they're pretty content with keeping Ding up and then letting Jake being the everyday guy and just letting Dylan kind of learn the ropes. Unless he really struggles out of the gate, he could go down potentially. But yeah, at this point, I don't think we're in any other serious conversations aside from Bregman and Sasaki.
All right, and we're going to get to a break, and I'm going to discuss that exact topic. Okay, so you pretty much to the T. It's almost like you were reading notes, touched on everything that I was. We'll start with Kirby Yates. Yeah, I would definitely like to see. I'd like to see us possibly go after him, just because I mean, as far as what who is our closer right now? Is it Foley is considered, or Tyler Holton?
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it's
I don't
combo even then.
Right, yeah. I don't think we have a fully defined closer at this point. Kirby Yates is definitely it would definitely be a guy. I mean, the appeal in him is that he's a swing and miss guy. He's a guy that can really shut the door, and even when there's runners on, he can go and get a guy out without them making contact. I think that's another, probably not to the same extent as Alex Bregman, but it's another guy that's on the top-notch level of free agency signings that we could go after. And, we did discuss that we had some interest there. So I don't think that's fully off the table. Obviously, Roki Sasaki, I mean, I think that the Dodgers just officially put their proposal in. But, if it's in fact true that he is interested in going to a smaller market where he can kind of develop and not have that pressure on him, that in that sense, it puts us in an opportunity, puts us in a position to make a move. And the fact that we can provide him with the most money. Obviously, your ceiling is highest in a market like LA, where you're going to eventually make a ton of money. But as far as the checking the boxes of small market and, being able to get the most money that you can get right now, we are amongst those teams that can provide that for him. And yeah, with Corbin Burns and Walker Buehler now being off the market, I think that Flaherty is in that next crop of pitchers that should be active pretty soon. So I can't fully just as far as the fact that he did enjoy, he is, I assume, appreciative of kind of the resurgence that we have assisted in providing for him, and the fact that we were able to take him to somewhere to where he was able to be successful, win a ring. I mean, he can kind of complete that. I've talked about this Disney Channel story of him, the full circle and coming back around and returning the favor. But yeah, that would certainly round out the rotation that we have right now, with a Skubal, Olsen, Cobb, Jackson Job, likely, and then Casey Mize is in there, but obviously you bring back Flaherty, you bring back a top of the rotation guy with Mize and Montero and Gibson Long, providing just more depth to a already sufficient, starting pitching role. So yeah, there's still some opportunities for us to strengthen ourselves and put us in a position to be atop the AL Central, because I think that we are nearly in the mix, but I mean, we're not head and shoulders amongst everybody else. So that's that. But anything else that you want to touch on before we get up out of here?
Yeah, like you said, it'd be nice to have Flaherty. I don't really want to think that he's going to sell himself short. Obviously, he was coming off a little bit of some shoulder concern on the trade. That's why he initially didn't. The deal with New York got nixed, the Yankees originally. But, like you said, he's proven himself. I think if he still has the fire and he's generally okay, I can still see him signing another 1-year deal somewhere, whether it's up or not. Ideally, I would lean towards us just based on that relationship and what he did last year, as you alluded to. But yeah, we'll wait till hopefully we'll get some good news with Bregman in that regard, and we got some guys that are pending some arbitration hearings, guys like Skubal and Bo Brisky, guys that really outperform their pay this year, so they'll get a bump. At that point, they're not going to take what the team would probably offer, considering what they put up numbers wise. This is a couple of those guys will get some bumps in pay, deservedly so. But yeah, aside from that, no, just making sure that these guys are healthy and they get acclimated to some of their new positions, or at least the opportunity to play some additional positions. And I guess we'll have to see where the cards fall. But without Bregman, I think we're in a competitive spot. It'll just be a matter of, okay, we started off well and then we slumped bad. Can we avoid a prolonged slump, aside from the normal up and down that we always see every year with Major League Baseball teams? Can they keep it to where they are in the wild card hunt, heading into, or the weeks leading into the wild trade deadline? I think that's kind of what we would like to see in terms of an improvement. And I guess, in a way, people will say, well, it doesn't matter. You get there how you get there. But obviously you feel better if you're 6, 7, 8 games over 500 heading in the trade deadline and you're right in that wild card hunt versus 20 some down. You're 12, 15 games under 500, and instead you're looking to be a soft seller. That's kind of the thing, pitfall I'd hope to avoid. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens coming out here in the next few weeks. But there's some optimism here. Like you said, I think on paper we're better than heading into this year than we were last year. No disrespect to the guys like Mark Hanna and Gio, guys who really did do well for themselves and were able to be on competitive teams the rest of the year. So we'll see. We got to get that Greedy Magic back and run it back for year 2.
Absolutely. So yeah, we will keep you guys up to date on any other transactions that happen for the Tigers. Is obviously looking I don't know, looking pretty decent on the Bregman situation, but we'll see. We definitely wanted to get you a show and get you some early reactions to the Torres signing, because spend that money, pizza man. I'll go get a hot and ready right now if it'll do you any, if it'll do any justice for you.
Hey, just raise that hot and sweaty $1. You'll make that up in a year.
Hey, I'm not against that. You already upped it past $5 to 620 or whatever it is. So hey, we will sacrifice in order to get some more good baseball players into town. We'll make that back down in Comerica Park. Yeah, because we all know that hot and sweaty isn't $5 or $6 down at the stadium. So you want to sell these luxury seats or not? Because I think you're on the because we got some. I think between Baez and Torres, you got the veteran moxie and the guys that have been there and done that, and got a little flair to their game. So it should be fun down there. But let's definitely round it out with one or two more solid players. And then, we can make that's going to cause guys like, Malloy, Perez, to be a little bit more expendable. But if we can continue to, build the team and, set ourselves up for the future, that's what we need to do, because the Tigers, it's been a while since the Tigers were a competitive team, but we remember those golden years when we had a lot of all-star potential out there, even like Ian Kinsler, and those are guys that they're not Cabrera. He wasn't Cabrera. Yeah, Torrey Hunter, Granderson, Austin Jackson. I mean, it was nothing to have all-star caliber players all over the field, and that's what the city deserves. And I don't want to get too far into the other teams around, but you get the Pistons. Hey, hey, coach, 3-0 on the West Coast trip. Don't let us beat the Nuggets tonight.
It's still top heavy league, unfortunately. At least there's some talent there to watch. I'll say that there's some talent. It's just been horribly mismanaged and miscoached last few years. So if they can get that situated, sidebar from the Tigers, you'll draw more in there, because obviously as Wings fans, we're going through some frustration right now. So it's been a little bit of a challenge having to watch a product at LCA between those two. That's not a college event, if you will. So yeah, at least they already have cleared the win total from last year. So yeah, you really couldn't go any more than up this year. So that's good in that regard. And yeah, like you said too, 20 years ago, this was I think there's still a lot of basketball sleepers in the city. It's just, we've been so frustrated since the Dumars, GM era, that it's been hard to get behind. And, we go through it in waves. Barry retired the Lions. We went through a decade or so of just humility with the Lions. So we've seen this wave, not to ourselves, but we've seen decades where each of these franchises have gone through some big time lows. So it's just a matter of making sure most of them are not at the same time.
And speaking of lows, the Wings, I saw that they played yesterday. They gave up 3 goals in the first period and 2 in the second. Wow. Yeah. They are bad.
They got talent. Bad. It's just they got to figure out the blue line help and goalie situation. And I know Eisman was a little irritated in his press conference, which he doesn't normally do too many in season. But obviously with the coaching change, it was fairly expected he was going to do that. So, we love him as a player, man, but he ain't on the ice, unfortunately, anymore. So it is what it is. And we're a prideful city, original 6 franchise, and the Red Wings and the Pistons coming from the bad boys there, and Chuck Daly, and that it all stems from grit and and determination in the city and the state. So, and that's what a lot of these these franchises carry with them. Doesn't matter which one it is. So we'll see, man. We'll see. But as for right now, Tigers are slowly kind of piecing things together, and we'll see what breaks here over the next couple of weeks before spring training.
Absolutely. So please subscribe to Bleachers Speakers on YouTube. If you're watching on the visual side, this is the raw and uncut version of the shows. They get chopped up with the ads and all that cute stuff. But if you want to hear the finished product, that's over on Corner to Copa on all audio aggregators. You can just Google it and it'll pop up for you. But yeah, we will keeping track of everything. We'll have some player profiles. We got some written material over on FFSN as well, so you guys can get all that stuff, because I think they said only 45 days away from catchers and pitchers reporting to Lakeland, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, so that's right around the corner, the top of the year, and then before you blink, we'll be active in that as well. So that's when we're really gonna turn up on the as far as the work is concerned. So stay tuned, and we'll be back very soon.
All right. Happy New Year, everyone.